You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
As mentioned, cricket it feels to me, riding high here in New Zealand right now. There's a Basin Reserve Test between New Zealand and Australia starting on the 29th of February. It's already sold out, well over a month out from its first day. That's all 5 days are sold out. The second test at Hagley Oval is headed the same way. The 3 T20s against Australia, which precede the Test series, also set for bumper crowds. There were healthy numbers in the stands for the recent Pakistan and Bangladesh white ball series. South Africa have arrived for a couple of test matches, albeit with a severely weakened side. And we've got England arriving in March for 5 T20s and 3 one-day internationals against our White Ferns. New Zealand Cricket CEO Scott Weenink is with us. Scott, thanks for taking the time for a chat this afternoon. It feels like the game is in very, very good heart here in New Zealand at the moment. Is that the sort of feeling that you're getting?
Yeah, that's certainly how we feel, Jason. Look, thanks for having me on again. Everyone has said to me we need to make the most of this because it feels like a very special period. I suddenly discovered I've got a lot more new friends tonight than I realised I had with all the requests for tickets, etc. that are now coming in. People I haven't heard from, for about 20 years are suddenly, hey, how are you? Love to catch up. And then the next question is, by the way, any chance of tickets for the Basin? So that's reflective of, I think, the kind of, we're getting a wider audience with free-to-air, Black Caps, and the White Ferns are playing really good cricket. So, it is an incredibly exciting period.
How important are crowd numbers through the gate for the financial health of New Zealand cricket?
Look, it absolutely helps to have good numbers through the gate. It's not a huge part of the finances, but it definitely helps continue to generate interest, creating atmosphere, and therefore, the broadcast and advertisers, are enthused by it.
Anecdotally, why do you think New Zealanders, Kiwis, are so connected to the game right now? Are there one or two main reasons?
I mean, we're certainly continuing on the back of a golden generation of New Zealand cricketers, both male and female. And so I think that certainly helps. When I was coming through the early 80s, we were successful. With Richard Hadley and Martin Crowe leading the way, and that generated a lot of interest. And then kind of the various times during the late 80s and 90s were a bit up and down. So being a Black Caps supporter was like being a Hurricane supporter. You had to kind of take the good with the bad. At the moment, we're playing great cricket, and we've got incredibly exciting players. And so I think that really helps. But also I think being back on free-to-air has had a huge impact because we're just getting a bigger audience.
Yeah, you've mentioned that a couple of times, and I did want to ask about that. It's clearly a big factor because there are more eyeballs on the games. You're in a bit of a unique position right now in that it's on free-to-air, but TVNZ aren't paying for that after the closure of Spark Sport. So if you look down the road a couple of summers, what do you expect to happen when the broadcast rights come up for renewal again?
But we're going to start those discussions soon. The reality is the broadcasting revenue that we get for broadcasting games in New Zealand domestically is a big part of our revenue stream. It might be that we're able to look at a kind of mixed model where we keep games on free-to-air, and then have some games behind a paywall. Or it might be that TVNZ finds that it generates so much interest that they're actually able to generate the sort of ad revenue required to be able to, pay the kind of broadcast rates that we actually will require to pay our players and finance the community game.
Would you take less money for cricket rights if it meant more games on free-to-air?
Yeah, I think we'd have to be prepared to do that for sure. All of that would come into the thinking of, what is in the best interest of New Zealand cricket long term. Do we take less for those broadcast rights in New Zealand, thereby generating bigger crowds and bigger revenue, and try and fill that pipe up another way with sponsorship revenue, for example. So that'll absolutely be part of the thinking. What we're doing at the moment is looking at what is our strategic plan for the next 5 years, and how does the broadcasting and the potential of continuing on free-to-air look.
That must make for some fascinating conversations around a strategy table, does it? Or or will do in the time ahead.
Oh, absolutely. No, we're going through an incredibly exciting period on the cricket field, but also off the cricket field. So, looking at that strategic reset and what cricket in New Zealand looks like over the next 5 years is a really, really interesting part of the job. World cricket is changing so dramatically that all needs to be taken into consideration as well. So, I'm incredibly excited about what's going on the field, but also what's going off the field.
Test cricket, obviously I mentioned at the top, massive numbers going to turn up to watch the Black Caps against Australia. Do you expect slightly fewer to come because of the team that South Africa are sending?
I don't think so, actually. No, I think there's genuinely a real interest in the South African test as well. At the end of the day, New Zealanders are going to be wanting to watch Kane Williamson bat and Tim Southee bowl. Who's on the opposition? I don't think is quite as important as people think. It's really about our players.
Just back to the discussion around what the landscape looks like moving forward and your different revenue streams. How do you balance the things off, Scott? Because you've got a dollar figure, which is an exact dollar figure. The exposure the game gets, it's often hard to quantify, isn't it? As you say, atmosphere's terrific. It looks great on TV, big crowds, all that sort of thing. So how do you balance the two to come up with the correct mix of revenue streams?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. Just at a very basic level, a broadcaster will say pay $2 million for a T20, they'll pay $1.5 million for an ODI, and they'll pay $1 million for a Test match. Now, of course, a Test match is over 5 days, and you're getting $1 million, whereas a T20 is paid over 3 hours, and you get $2 million for that. So, the T20 and ODIs are definitely still, enabling us to play Test cricket. But we need to recognise that Test cricket is also incredibly important to our fans and also our players. So it is a real balancing act, and I think we're getting the right balance at the moment. But it's changing constantly, so it's something that we need to keep on top of.
Yeah, you reckon 4 home tests is about right? We didn't have any before Christmas, obviously, but do you reckon 4 home tests, or is that about right each summer?
We're aiming for between 5 and 6, depending on who the opposition is. 4 is not ideal, but what we do have coming up we've got 13 test matches coming up over the next 9 months. Which is a huge diet of Test cricket. And then there's a gap where we have very few Test matches, and that's just unfortunately the nature of this Future Tours program. So as I say, it really depends on who the opposition is. If we've got, one of the big 3 or 2 of the big 3 coming, ideally we'd have 6 Test matches. If it's some of the lesser nations, then, 4 to 5 is probably about the right number.
In your conversations with our top players who now can earn, as we know, a lot of money playing IPL, and I guess if we use an example, Daryl Mitchell, do you think Daryl Mitchell still relishes the opportunity to play Test cricket without wanting to put words in his mouth?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I haven't spoken to Daryl specifically about it, but I've spoken to other members of the Black Caps team, and Test cricket and playing for the Black Caps is absolutely key for them. And having Test cricket is really, one of the key ways that we can keep players playing for New Zealand. If we didn't have Test cricket, I think you would find more Black Caps would be off just playing domestic leagues and coming back and making themselves available just for World Cups. So, no, they do relish the opportunity of playing Test cricket and would like to play as much as possible.
4 or 5 months, I think, into the job now, Scott. How's it going? How are you finding it?
Well, people keep asking me, how's the job going? And I'm like, well, it doesn't really feel like a job half the time because, I'm getting to watch cricket. But also that element, Jason, that you raised about the whole, strategy around the game, that is an incredibly interesting part of the job too. So look, still in the honeymoon period, really enjoying it. At some stage the worm will turn and media and everyone else will turn on me without any doubt. But that is all part of it. So going really well. As you pointed out right at the start, we do feel like we're in a golden period of cricket, and it's about making the most of that and enjoying it.
Do you reckon you would have preferred, say, the first 4 or 5 months to have been, I don't know, May to September or something, or have you enjoyed the fact that you go full on into a summer?
No, I think it's best to just go full on into it. I actually can't. This is definitely a 24/7, 12-month-a-year job. Even in the off season, I'm looking at my calendar and I don't see too many gaps. But that's incredible. But look, I'm incredibly excited about that. It really has been a great period, and I see that continuing.
All right. Well, I hope you can solve the challenge of your ticket allocation for the Basin Reserve. That seems to me to be one of the tougher challenges facing you at the moment. Who are you going to give them to?
Yeah, well, exactly. But as I say, there's a number of people who I haven't heard from for years who are suddenly wanting tickets, and I'm having to be a little bit brutal with them. But when it's former Black Caps and things who actually they get an allocation of tickets each year and saying, look, I can't get tickets. That's the more challenging one.
Absolutely. Hey, Scott, thank you for being so generous with your time. Great to catch up. I'm glad things are going so well. As you say, it's a pretty golden period. I know our listeners are enjoying it. Cricket fans up and down the country really relishing the game that they love so much. Thanks for taking the time for a chat.
Thanks, Jason. My pleasure.
Have a good day, mate. Scott Weenink there, CEO of New Zealand Cricket. Your chance to react to what you heard from him. 0800 80 10 80 is our phone number. And I'm keen to know, I don't think I'm imagining this. And I don't think Scott Weenink is imagining it either. Has your interest in the game of cricket been reinvigorated, revived? And if it has, why has it? There's no doubt, and Scott mentioned it a couple of times, that free-to-air coverage has played a massive part here. I read the Bounce newsletter from Dylan Cleaver yesterday, and he suggested that on Sky, 250,000 was considered a big audience for the Black Caps. And he understood that those numbers dropped to around 180,000 on Spark. Now, cricket viewing numbers are frequently 800,000 or more. That is a massive increase. There were 1 million watching the Black Clash the other night. That's not even a proper game of cricket, really. There's also audio coverage through the ACC, of course, the Alternative Commentary Collective. Our streaming numbers higher than they have been previously. The ACC is part of our stable here at NZME. Scott Weenink mentioned it there. They would take less money in a broadcast deal if it meant a greater free-to-air component. And it comes down to striking the balance, doesn't it, between those big TV audiences and broadcast revenue, which is still the biggest income earner for New Zealand cricket. At the moment, they are living in a bit of a false economy because Spark Sports closure and TVNZ taking over the rights is a total Christmas present for New Zealand cricket because they get free-to-air cricket and they don't lose any money. I'm not sure that TVNZ would have been able to afford to pick up the bill, if you like, if Spark hadn't agreed to continue to pay it for the next 2 summers. I'm keen to hear the balance that you would be looking to strike if you were around the table working out what the next broadcast deal might look like. 0800 80 10 80. Broadcast revenue is still the biggest earner for New Zealand cricket and for many sports organisations. They have to maximise the money they can get for those broadcast rights. But it has to be a factor, free-to-air, right? Has to be. 0800 80 10 80 with your views. And let's not forget too, that, quite aside from the fact that more people can watch it, the cricket's been good to watch. Exciting players, a bit of a new wave of youngsters, the likes of Finn Allen, Rachin Ravindra, Glenn Phillips, although he's been around for a bit longer, Ben Sears, Will O'Rourke. We've seen debuts for Josh Clarkson, Addy Ashok. It feels like the new wave is coming, the new wave of Black Caps, because we've had, a pretty settled side for a long time now. We've got these new young players starting to pique our interest. 0800 80 10 80 on that. And just before we go to the phones, Scott Weenink impresses me greatly. Good, clear, honest answers to the questions I asked him. No dancing around the issues, no cliches, no half answers. He's an impressive bloke. I think New Zealand cricket have got a good one there with Scott Weenink as their CEO.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.
This week on the Parenting Hangover podcast.
Do you use off-peak power?
No, 6:59 a.m. I go to the meter box and I just shut it off. Whole house is just dark. They'll survive. Like I said, they eat Wheat Bix, right? They love Wheat Bix. So the milk will stay cold in the fridge. The showers will still be warm. Am I onto something here?
I feel like you're taking the piss.
I'm not. And then 10 a.m. or as soon as they leave, boof, put it back on.
The Parenting Hangover with Clinton Jordan. New episodes every Thursday on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts.